The first blow split Elena's lip, the second cracked her ribs. By the third, she stopped counting. Rain mixed with blood on the concrete as two men in leather jackets circled her like wolves, their eyes cold with purpose. "You work for Volkov," one spat, driving his boot into her stomach. "Tell your boss Viktor Kozlov sends his regards." Through the agony, Elena's mind screamed the bitter truth. She was nobody, just an invisible housekeeper caught in a war she didn't understand. But as darkness closed in, she couldn't have known that tonight everything would change. If you want to see how this story unfolds and where love collides with danger, stay until the very end. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far Elena's journey reaches across the world. The rain had been falling for 3 hours when Elena Brooks finally locked the service entrance of the Volkov mansion and stepped into the Manhattan night. Her shoulders ached from scrubbing marble floors that stretched like frozen lakes through rooms larger than most people's entire apartments. 14 months she'd worked in that cold palace of wealth and whispers. And still, Adrian Volkov himself barely knew she existed. She pulled her thin jacket tighter, the estate's embroidered logo, a silver wolf's head, visible even in the dim streetlight. It was past midnight. The subway would be nearly empty, which meant a faster ride back to the cramped studio apartment in Queens where her brother Lucas waited, probably still awake despite the pain medication, probably worried about her like he always was. Elena's phone buzzed, a text from Lucas. "You okay?" She smiled despite her exhaustion and typed back, "Almost home. Go to sleep." His response came immediately. "Not tired. Made mac and cheese? Saved you some." Her heart clenched. Lucas was 19, 3 years younger than her, and he'd been trying to take care of her ever since the accident that had stolen his ability to walk. Before that, he'd been a track star with scholarship offers from half a dozen colleges. Now he spent his days in a wheelchair in their tiny apartment, cooking simple meals and pretending he wasn't slowly dying inside. The medical bills from their mother's cancer treatment had already crushed them. The ongoing costs of Lucas's care were burying them alive. The debt collectors called 5 times a day. Elena worked 3 jobs: the Volkov mansion by night, a diner during breakfast shift, and weekend cleaning gigs anywhere she could find them. She slept 4 hours if she was lucky. But she never complained, not where Lucas could hear. The attack came without warning. She was cutting through an alley, a shortcut she'd taken 100 times, when the footsteps echoed behind her. Elena's instincts screamed danger, but before she could run, a hand grabbed her ponytail and yanked her backward. Her skull cracked against a brick wall. "Well, well," a man's voice rough as gravel. "What do we have here?" Elena's vision blurred. Through the rain and pain, she saw 2 men blocking the alley's exit. Both wore leather jackets slick with water. Both had the dead eyes of people who hurt others for a living. "Please," Elena gasped. "I don't have any money. I don't—" The taller man stepped closer, and his eyes fixed on her jacket. On the logo, his smile was a terrible thing. "You work for Adrian Volkov." It wasn't a question. Elena's blood turned to ice. "I'm just a housekeeper," she whispered. "I clean, that's all. I don't know anything about—" The first punch caught her in the mouth. Elena tasted copper and felt her lip split. She tried to scream, but the second man grabbed her throat, cutting off her air. "Viktor Kozlov sends a message," the tall one said, almost conversational. Then he drove his fist into her ribs. Elena heard something crack. Pain exploded through her chest like lightning. She crumpled, but they held her up, taking turns, professional, methodical, breaking her body with the precision of men who'd done this before. "Tell Volkov," the tall man grunted between blows. "His protection doesn't mean shit. Tell him Victor owns these streets now." Through the agony, Elena wanted to laugh. Tell Volkov? She'd worked in his house for over a year and he'd never spoken a single word to her. She was furniture, a ghost who cleaned his floors and washed his sheets and disappeared before he woke each morning. But she couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The world was spinning, rain and blood and darkness mixing together. "She's done," the second man said. They dropped her. Elena hit the concrete like a broken doll, her body folding in ways it shouldn't. She heard footsteps walking away, casual as if they'd just finished a cigarette break. "Lucas," she thought desperately. "Who's going to take care of Lucas?" The darkness swallowed her. She woke to voices and motion, Found her in the alley. Jesus Christ, Mikhail, there's so much blood. Drive faster. Call Dr. Petrov, now. Elena tried to open her eyes, but one was swollen shut. Through the other, she saw leather seats, tinted windows, rain streaming past. A car. Someone had put her in a car. Panic surged. She tried to move and immediately regretted it. Fire shot through her ribs. Easy. A hand touched her shoulder, gentle but firm. You're safe now. We're taking you home. Home? Elena's working eye focused on the man beside her. She recognized him. Mikhail, Volkov's driver. She'd seen him dozens of times, always waiting by the black Mercedes, always watching the street with the alert stillness of a trained guard dog. My brother, Elena managed through broken lips. Lucas, he's alone. He needs... We'll take care of it, Mikhail said. His voice was gruff, but not unkind. Right now, you need a doctor. The car pulled through iron gates Elena recognized. The Volkov mansion rose ahead, all glass and stone and old money. She'd never entered through the front before. The service entrance was her world, the kitchen, the laundry, the endless hallways she cleaned in silence. Why? Elena coughed and tasted blood. Why did you bring me here? Mikhail didn't answer. The car stopped, and suddenly there were more hands, careful voices, someone lifting her like she weighed nothing. Elena caught a glimpse of the mansion's grand entrance, all marble and crystal chandeliers, before they carried her inside to a room she'd cleaned 1,000 times, but never truly seen. They laid her on a leather couch. A man appeared, older, silver-haired, carrying a medical bag. Dr. Petrov, she'd heard the other staff mention him. Volkov's personal physician. Broken ribs, he murmured, examining her with practiced efficiency. Possible concussion, extensive bruising. Who did this? Victor's men. The voice came from the doorway, cold as winter steel. Elena turned her head, and her breath caught despite the pain. Adrian Volkov stood in the entrance of his own study like a king surveying conquered territory. He was younger than she'd expected from glimpsed moments, perhaps 35, with dark hair and darker eyes that seemed to calculate the value of everything they touched. He wore a charcoal suit despite the late hour, not a thread out of place. Powerful, controlled, dangerous. And looking directly at her for the first time in 14 months. Who are you? He asked. Elena's heart sank. After more than a year of working in his house, he didn't even recognize her. Elena Brooks, Mikhail answered when she couldn't find her voice. She works here. Housekeeping staff. Night shift. Adrian's eyes narrowed. How long? 14 months, sir. Something flickered across Adrian's face. Surprise, perhaps, or shame. He stepped closer, and Elena fought the urge to shrink back. She'd seen this man from a distance, heard the whispered stories from other staff members. They said he ran half of Manhattan's underworld. They said men who crossed him disappeared. They said he had ice in his veins instead of blood. But right now, staring down at her broken body, his expression was unreadable. Victor's men did this? He asked her directly. Elena nodded, wincing. They wanted me to give you a message. They said he owns these streets now. Adrian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, which somehow made it more terrifying. Did you see their faces? Yes. Could you identify them? Elena hesitated. Every instinct screamed that getting more involved in whatever war was brewing between Adrian Volkov and this Viktor Kozlov was a death sentence. She should say no. She should disappear back into her invisible life and pray they forgot about her. But then she thought of Lucas, alone in their apartment, probably panicking by now because she hadn't come home. She thought of the debt collectors who called every morning. She thought of the medical bills that kept coming, relentless as the tide. She thought of how these men had broken her ribs and left her to die in an alley because of a logo on her jacket. Yes, Elena said firmly, I could identify them. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to Mikhail. Bring me the surveillance files from Victor's known locations for the past week. Cross-reference with our street reports. Yes, sir. To Dr. Petrov. She stays here tonight. Guest room, whatever she needs. Adrian, the doctor began, she should really be in a hospital. Here. The word was final. Hospitals ask questions. Questions lead to police reports. Police reports complicate things. He looked back at Elena, and for a moment something almost human crossed his features. "You've worked in my house for 14 months, he said quietly, "and I never noticed. That ends now. You're under my protection, Miss Brooks. No one touches what's mine." Before Elena could process those words, "What's mine?" he was gone, striding from the room with Mikhail at his heels, already giving orders into his phone in Russian. Dr. Petrov returned to examining her injuries, gentle and efficient. "You're lucky Mikhail found you when he did. Another hour in that alley." He didn't finish, but Elena understood. She'd been dying. "My brother," she whispered. "Lucas. He's home alone. He's in a wheelchair. He can't—" "I'll call someone." Dr. Petrov pulled out his phone. "Address?" Elena gave it to him, listening as he made the call with calm authority. Within minutes, he'd arranged for one of Volkov's men to check on Lucas, to explain that Elena was safe, to stay with him until morning. The relief was so intense Elena nearly wept. They moved her to a guest room that was larger than her entire apartment. The bed felt like sleeping on a cloud. Dr. Petrov gave her something for the pain, and blessed numbness spread through her limbs. But even as exhaustion pulled her toward sleep, Elena's mind kept replaying Adrian Volkov's words. "You're under my protection. No one touches what's mine." She'd been invisible for 14 months, a ghost who cleaned his floors and laundered his sheets, and existed only in the margins of his world. But now he'd seen her. And Elena couldn't decide if that was salvation or the most dangerous thing that had ever happened to her. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then her ribs screamed with pain, and memory crashed back. The attack. Mikhail finding her, Adrian Volkov's cold eyes seeing her, truly seeing her, for the first time. She sat up carefully, biting back a groan. Someone had changed her into soft pajamas while she slept. The clothes she'd been wearing, torn, bloody, were gone. On the nightstand sat a bottle of water, pain medication with handwritten dosage instructions, and a note in elegant script. "Dr. Petrov will check on you at 10 a.m. Rest. A.V." Elena checked her phone. 9:47 a.m. and 17 missed calls from Lucas. She dialed him immediately. "Elena?" His voice cracked with relief. "Holy shit, are you okay? This guy showed up last night, said you were hurt but safe, wouldn't tell me anything else. I've been losing my mind." "I'm okay," Elena lied. "I'm fine, really. There was an incident, but I'm safe now." "What kind of incident? Where are you?" Elena looked around the guest room with its expensive art and furniture that cost more than she'd earn in a year. How could she explain this to Lucas? How could she tell him their lives had just collided with Adrian Volkov's world in the worst possible way? "I'm at the estate," she said carefully. "Mr. Volkov is helping. I'll explain everything soon, okay? I promise." Lucas was quiet for a moment. "Elena, what happened?" A knock at the door saved her from answering. "I have to go. I'll call you back in an hour. I love you." She ended the call before he could protest. "Come in." Dr. Petrov entered carrying another medical bag. He examined her ribs with gentle efficiency, checked her pupils, asked about her pain level. "You're healing well," he said finally, "but you need rest. At least a week, preferably 2. Elena almost laughed. "I can't rest for 2 weeks. I have to work. I have bills already handled." She froze. "What?" "Mr. Volkov has arranged for your wages to continue during recovery. He's also settled your outstanding medical debts." Elena's world tilted. What? No, I can't accept that. I don't even know how much. $247,000. The number hit her like a physical blow. She'd known the debt was crushing, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. $247,000. More money than she'd earned in 5 years of working herself to death. And Adrian Volkov had erased it like it was nothing. "Why?" Elena whispered. "Why would he do that?" Dr. Petrov's expression softened. "You were hurt because of him. Because you work in his house. Adrian takes that personally. But I'm nobody. I'm just Not anymore. The doctor closed his bag. You identified the men who attacked you. That makes you valuable. And Adrian protects what's valuable. He left her with that unsettling thought and instructions to call if she needed anything. Elena sat in the enormous bed trying to process what had just happened. Her debts were gone. The weight that had been crushing her for 3 years, the suffocating pressure that woke her at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat, gone. Just like that. But nothing was free, especially not in Adrian Volkov's world. What have I gotten myself into? Elena. She spent the day in the guest room, alternating between sleep and anxious phone calls with Lucas. By evening, she felt strong enough to attempt walking. The pain medication helped, though her ribs still screamed with each breath. Elena made her way to the door and into the hallway beyond. She'd cleaned these halls 100 times, but experiencing them as a guest rather than invisible staff felt surreal. Everything looked different from this angle. Bigger, more intimidating. Voices drifted from downstairs. Male voices, speaking Russian in clipped tones. Elena recognized one. Mikhail. The other was deeper, colder. Adrian. She knew she should return to her room. Whatever they were discussing wasn't her business. But curiosity, or maybe something darker, pulled her forward. She moved carefully down the grand staircase, staying close to the wall. Found them, Mikhail's voice carried from the study. Both men from last night. They're at Victor's warehouse on the waterfront. How many others? Adrian asked. At least a dozen, maybe more. Victor's ramping up for something big. Silence. Then, bring me the girls' descriptions. I want confirmation before we move. Elena's breath caught. They were going after the men who'd attacked her. Tonight, probably. And if Adrian Volkov's reputation was even half true, those men wouldn't survive the encounter. She should feel guilty. She should feel horror at being the catalyst for violence. Instead, she felt a savage satisfaction that frightened her. Elena! She jumped, spinning too fast. Pain lanced through her ribs, and she grabbed the banister to steady herself. Adrian stood at the base of the stairs, watching her with those calculating dark eyes. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I was just walking. He climbed the stairs to her level with fluid grace. Up close, Elena noticed details she'd missed before. The faint scar along his jaw. The weariness around his eyes that expensive suits couldn't hide. The way he moved like violence was always one breath away. You shouldn't be out of bed, he said. I've been in bed all day. I needed to move. His eyes dropped to where she clutched her side. You're in pain. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. Something almost like amusement flickered across his face. Doctor, Petrov said you need 2 weeks of rest. You'll stay here until you're healed. Elena's pride flared. I can't stay here for 2 weeks. I have a life. My brother needs me. I can't just... Your brother. Adrian's expression shifted. Lucas, yes? 19 years old, paralyzed in a car accident 2 years ago. Currently living in a 400-square-foot studio in Queens with inadequate wheelchair access and minimal medical care. Elena's blood ran cold. How do you know that? I make it my business to know things. He said it without apology. Especially about people under my protection. I didn't ask for your protection. You identified the men who attacked you. That made it my responsibility. So what? Elena's voice rose despite the pain it caused. You erased my debts. You're hunting down the people who hurt me. You're learning everything about my life. And I'm just supposed to accept it? Supposed to be grateful? Yes. The simple arrogance of that single word should have made her furious. Instead, Elena found herself fighting an inappropriate urge to laugh. This man had more power in his little finger than she'd had in her entire life. He operated by rules she didn't understand, in a world where violence was currency and people disappeared for asking the wrong questions, and he expected her to just accept it. I can't stay here, she said quietly. Lucas is alone. He needs me. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Bring him here. Elena blinked. What? Your brother. Bring him to the estate. There's a first-floor suite with full wheelchair accessibility. Dr. Petrov specializes in spinal injuries. He can provide better care than Lucas is currently receiving. I can't... You can't just... I can. Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact. And I will, unless you'd prefer to return to your studio apartment while Victor's men are still looking for ways to hurt me, in which case you're both dead within a week. The brutal honesty stole her breath. You're threatening us. I'm stating facts. He moved closer, and Elena caught the scent of expensive cologne and something darker underneath. You're involved now, Elena, whether you wanted to be or not. The moment you wore that logo on your jacket, the moment Victor's men used you to send me a message, you became part of this world. The only question is whether I protect you or leave you to fend for yourself. His hand came up to her face, and Elena froze. Adrian's fingers ghosted along her bruised jaw so gently she barely felt it. They did this because of me, he said quietly. So I'll fix it, all of it. Your debts, your brother's care, your safety. But you stay where I can protect you. Both of you. Elena's heart hammered against her broken ribs. She should run. Every instinct screamed to get away from this dangerous man and his dangerous world. But when she looked into Adrian Volkov's eyes, she didn't see the cold crime lord everyone feared. She saw someone who understood what it meant to carry impossible weight alone. Okay, she whispered. Adrian nodded once and stepped back. Mikhail will bring Lucas here tonight. Pack whatever you both need. This is your home now. He walked away, leaving Elena on the staircase, trying to understand how her entire life had just changed in the span of a 5-minute conversation. Lucas arrived 3 hours later, wheeling himself through the mansion's front entrance with wide eyes and barely contained panic. Elena met him in the foyer, and the relief on his face when he saw her nearly broke her heart. Jesus, Elena. He grabbed her hand, searching her face. What the hell happened, and what is this place? It's a long story. Elena glanced at Mikhail, who stood a respectful distance away. Come on, I'll explain everything. She took Lucas to the first-floor suite Adrian had mentioned. It was bigger than their entire apartment, with wide doorways, a bathroom fitted with accessibility bars, and windows overlooking the estate's gardens. Someone had already stocked it with medical supplies. Lucas wheeled to the window, staring out at manicured lawns that stretched toward distant trees. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. Elena, who is this guy? Adrian Volkov. Elena sat carefully on the suite's couch. He owns this estate. I've been cleaning here for over a year. The Mafia Boss? Lucas spun his wheelchair to face her. Elena, are you kidding me right now? You've been working for a fucking crime lord? I didn't know. I thought he was just rich, old money or something. And now we're living in his house because... Elena took a breath and told him everything. The attack in the alley, Mikhail finding her, Adrian's offer of protection, and how it wasn't really an offer at all. The debts that had been erased. The impossible choice that had become no choice. Lucas listened in silence, his hands gripping his wheelchair's armrests so tight his knuckles went white. This is my fault, he said when she finished. If I hadn't been in that accident, if you weren't drowning in my medical bills, don't. Elena moved to kneel beside his chair despite the pain it caused. Lucas, none of this is your fault. You didn't ask for any of this. Neither did you. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. You should be in college. You should be living your life, not working 3 jobs to keep me alive. You're my brother. You're the only family I have. I'd work 100 jobs if that's what it took. Lucas pulled her into a fierce hug, careful of her injuries. They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other in the surreal luxury of Adrian Volkov's guest suite. So what now? Lucas asked finally. We just live here, under the protection of a mafia boss? That's our life now? I don't know. Elena pulled back, wiping her eyes. But we're safe. For the first time in years, Lucas, we're actually safe. We can breathe. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mikhail stepped inside, his expression carefully neutral. Mr. Volkov requests Miss Brooks's presence in his study. Elena's stomach dropped. Now? If you're able. Lucas grabbed her hand. I'll come with you. No. Mikhail's voice was firm. Just Elena. Dr. Petrov will be here shortly to examine you, Mr. Brooks. He'll discuss your treatment options. Lucas looked ready to argue, but Elena squeezed his hand. It's okay. I'll be fine. She followed Mikhail through the mansion's winding halls, her heart beating faster with each step. The study door was open. Adrian stood at the windows, silhouetted against the city lights, looking like he owned the world. Maybe he did. "You wanted to see me?" Elena asked from the doorway. Adrian turned. In his hand was a tablet, and he set it on the desk between them. "I need you to confirm something." Elena approached carefully. The tablet showed security footage, grainy, black and white, but clear enough. Two men stood outside a warehouse, smoking cigarettes. Both wore leather jackets. Both had the dead eyes she remembered. Her blood turned cold. "That's them. The ones who attacked me." Adrian's expression didn't change, but something dark flickered in his eyes. "You're certain?" "Yes, I'm certain." He picked up the tablet, his movements precise and controlled. "Thank you. That's all I needed." Elena should have left, should have returned to Lucas and pretended she didn't know what was about to happen. Instead, she heard herself ask, "What are you going to do to them?" Adrian looked at her for a long moment. "What would you like me to do to them?" The question was a test. Elena knew it instinctively, but she was done pretending, done being the invisible girl who swallowed her anger and accepted whatever the world threw at her. "I want them to understand what they did," she said quietly. "I want them to know that I'm not just a message. I'm a person. And what they did to me matters." Something shifted in Adrian's gaze. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. "They'll understand," he promised, before the end. He dismissed her with a nod, already reaching for his phone. Elena left the study on shaking legs, knowing that somewhere in the city, two men's fates had just been sealed, and she couldn't bring herself to feel guilty about it. Bump. She didn't see Adrian for 3 days. Mikhail came and went. Dr. Petrov examined her ribs daily and started an intensive treatment plan for Lucas. The estate staff treated both Brooke's siblings with careful courtesy, bringing meals and fresh linens and asking if they needed anything. But Adrian Volkov remained absent. Elena told herself she didn't care, told herself she was relieved not to face those cold, calculating eyes that seemed to see straight through her. But late at night, when pain and anxiety kept her awake, she found herself wondering where he was, what he was doing, if the men who'd attacked her were already dead. On the 4th morning, Elena woke to find Adrian sitting in the chair beside her bed. She bolted upright with a gasp, immediately regretting it as her ribs protested. "Jesus, you can't just... How long have you been there?" 20 minutes. He looked exhausted, she realized. His suit was wrinkled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "I wanted to make sure you were healing properly. You could have just asked Dr. Petrov. I wanted to see for myself." Elena pulled the blanket higher, suddenly aware she wore only a thin nightshirt. "Where have you been?" "Handling business." Adrian's voice was flat, empty. "The men who hurt you won't be a problem anymore." "You killed them." "I protected what's mine." There it was again. That phrase that made her feel like property and something infinitely more valuable at the same time. "I'm not yours," Elena said quietly. "You're under my protection. That makes you mine." Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for a moment he looked almost human, almost vulnerable. "Do you know how long you worked in this house before last week?" 14 months. And in all that time I never saw you. Never noticed. Staff came and went, invisible as furniture." His jaw tightened. "It shames me that you were here, working yourself to death to save your brother, and I couldn't be bothered to learn your name." Elena didn't know what to say. This honesty felt dangerous, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with the fact that he was in her bedroom at dawn. "You're seeing me now," she whispered. "Yes." Adrian's eyes met hers. "And I won't stop." The promise in those words sent heat through Elena's body that had nothing to do with healing injuries. This was insane. He was a criminal, a killer, the kind of man her mother would have warned her to run from. But when Adrian Volkov looked at her like she mattered, like she was more than invisible, Elena felt something shift inside her chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. "Get some rest," Adrian said, standing. "Dr. Petrov wants you walking more, building strength. Mikhail will help if you need anything." He moved toward the door, and Elena found herself calling after him. "Adrian?" He stopped, turning back. It was the first time she'd used his first name. They both knew it. Thank you, she said, for everything. For Lucas. For seeing me. Adrian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. You're welcome, Elena. He left, closing the door quietly behind him, and Elena lay back against the pillows, her heart racing, wondering how she'd gone from invisible to the center of Adrian Volkov's dangerous attention in less than a week, and why part of her never wanted to be invisible again. 2 weeks passed in a strange rhythm that felt like living in a dream Elena wasn't sure she wanted to wake from. Her ribs healed slowly, the sharp pain fading to a dull ache that only flared when she moved too quickly. Dr. Petrov visited daily, monitoring her progress with the same careful attention he gave Lucas, whose treatment had already shown remarkable improvements. Lucas was walking again. Not far, not without assistance, but walking. The experimental therapy doctor. Petrov had started, something involving stem cells and cutting-edge techniques that would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars anywhere else, was giving her brother back pieces of the life the accident had stolen. Elena watched him take halting steps across the suite's hardwood floor each morning, supported by parallel bars the medical staff had installed, and felt tears she couldn't quite explain. This is insane, Lucas said during one session, sweat beading his forehead from the effort. A month ago I couldn't feel my legs. Now I'm walking. How is this even possible? Dr. Petrov smiled, adjusting the monitoring equipment. Possible because you're young, your injury wasn't complete, and you have access to treatments most people never will. Mr. Volkov spares no expense. Lucas glanced at Elena, and she saw the question in his eyes. The same question that kept her awake at night. What's the price for all this generosity? But neither of them spoke it aloud. Adrian remained a ghost in his own house. Elena caught glimpses of him, crossing the foyer in a dark suit, speaking rapid Russian on his phone, disappearing into his study for meetings that stretched into the early morning hours. Sometimes she heard raised voices through the thick doors. Sometimes she heard nothing but silence, which felt more ominous. He never approached her, never sought her out after that dawn conversation in her bedroom. It should have been a relief. Instead, Elena found herself hyper-aware of his absence, listening for his footsteps, watching for shadows in doorways. She told herself it didn't matter, told herself she was being ridiculous. She was lying. On the 15th day, Mikhail found her in the library. Elena had discovered it by accident, a 2-story room lined with books in a dozen languages, leather chairs positioned near tall windows overlooking the estate's gardens. She'd been reading there for an hour, trying to lose herself in someone else's story, when Mikhail's reflection appeared in the window glass. Miss Brooks, Mr. Volkov would like to see you. Elena's heart kicked against her ribs. Now? If you're available. She set down her book and followed Mikhail through hallways that were becoming familiar. The study door was open. Adrian stood behind his desk, examining something on his computer screen. He looked up when she entered, and Elena felt the impact of his gaze like a physical touch. You're walking better, he observed. Dr. Petrov says I'm healing ahead of schedule. Good. Adrian closed his laptop and moved around the desk. He wore black slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and Elena tried not to notice the lean muscle of his forearms, the way his shoulders moved under expensive fabric. I need your help with something. My help? Viktor Kozlov. Adrian pulled up an image on the tablet he'd picked up. Do you know who he is? Elena shook her head. The man in the photo was older than Adrian, maybe mid-40s, with cold blue eyes and the kind of face that looked carved from granite. Hard, unforgiving. He runs operations on the east side, Adrian explained. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. He's been trying to expand into my territory for 6 months. The attack on you was his way of declaring war. Elena's mouth went dry. War? A word. Nothing more. But the tension in Adrian's shoulders suggested otherwise. Victor operates from a club downtown. High-end, invitation only. I need information about his security arrangements, his routines. I have people inside, but they're limited in what they can access. And you need me because... Adrian's eyes met hers. Because I'm taking you there tonight, as my guest. The words landed like a bomb. Elena stared at him, certain she'd misheard. You want me to go to this crime lord's club, the one whose men beat me half to death? They won't recognize you. Adrian's voice was matter of fact. You were beaten in an alley at night. You'll be dressed differently, hair and makeup professionally done. And you'll be with me. No one will look at the girl on my arm and see a housekeeper. But why me? You must have, I don't know, trained people for this kind of thing. I do. But Victor knows all of them. Adrian moved closer and Elena caught that scent again. Expensive cologne and something darker underneath. He's never seen you, never heard your name. You're invisible to him, which makes you perfect. There was that word again. Invisible. Except Adrian made it sound like an asset instead of a curse. What would I have to do? Elena asked carefully. Be seen with me. Smile. Play the part of a woman who's captivated by my attention. His mouth curved slightly. Think you can manage that? Heat rushed to Elena's face. I'm not an actress. You don't need to be. Just be yourself. Adrian's hand came up to her face, fingers ghosting along her now healed jaw, the same way he'd touched her bruises weeks ago. Stay close to me. Listen, if anyone talks. Remember faces. That's all. And if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong. Mikhail and 6 others will be there. You'll be safe. His eyes darkened. I promise you, Elena, nothing and no one will touch you. She should say no. This was insane, dangerous, exactly the kind of situation she'd sworn to avoid when she'd promised her dying mother she'd take care of Lucas. But standing in Adrian Volkov's study, feeling the warmth of his hand against her skin, Elena felt something reckless rising in her chest. For 3 years she'd been invisible, careful, safe. And where had it gotten her? Buried in debt, working herself to exhaustion, attacked in an alley for wearing the wrong jacket. Maybe it was time to stop being invisible. Okay, Elena whispered. I'll do it. Adrian's expression shifted, surprise perhaps, or satisfaction. His hand dropped from her face. Good. Be ready by 9. And Elena? Yes? Wear something that makes men forget their own names. He turned back to his desk, dismissing her, leaving Elena to wonder what the hell she'd just agreed to. At 7 o'clock, 3 women appeared at Elena's door, carrying garment bags and cases full of makeup and styling tools. They introduced themselves as Natasha, Irina, and Sonia, professional stylists who apparently worked for Adrian regularly. Mr. Volkov said you need to look perfect tonight, Natasha said, already assessing Elena with a critical eye. So let's get started. The next 2 hours were a whirlwind. They washed and styled her hair into soft waves that fell past her shoulders, applied makeup that transformed her face, not into someone else, but into a more polished, dangerous version of herself. Dark eyes, full lips, cheekbones sharp enough to cut. Then came the dress. Oh, hell no, Elena said when Natasha pulled it from the garment bag. That's not a dress. That's barely fabric. That, Irina corrected, is Alexander McQueen, worth more than most people's cars. And it's perfect. The dress was black silk that clung to every curve Elena didn't know she had. The neckline plunged dangerously low. The back was nearly non-existent. When she finally let them zip her into it, Elena barely recognized her own reflection. I look like a completely different person. You look like the kind of woman who belongs on Adrian Volkov's arm, Sonia said with satisfaction. Which is exactly the point. A knock at the door. Mikhail's voice. Miss Brooks? Mr. Volkov is waiting. Elena's stomach flipped. She slipped into the heels Natasha had selected. Black, vertiginous, absolutely lethal, and took a steadying breath. The women had vanished with their cases, leaving her alone with her reflection and the terrifying reality of what she was about to do. Lucas appeared in the doorway, having wheeled himself from his suite. His eyes went wide. Holy shit, Elena. Language. Seriously, you look... Wow. Then concern crept across his face. Are you sure about this? Whatever you're doing tonight. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Be careful, please. Elena crossed to him and kissed his forehead. Always. She found Adrian in the foyer, and the moment their eyes met, the air changed. He wore a black suit tailored so perfectly it looked painted on. His dark hair swept back, and when he saw her descending the staircase, he went completely still. Elena. Her name on his lips sounded different. Dangerous. Is this acceptable? She hated how uncertain she sounded. Adrian moved to the base of the stairs, and when Elena reached him, he took her hand. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, deliberate and slow. "You're going to stop every heart in that club," he said quietly. "Including mine." Heat flooded through Elena's body. This was an act, she reminded herself. Part of the cover. Adrian Volkov didn't actually want her. He needed her to play a role. But the way he looked at her felt devastatingly real. "Shall we?" Adrian offered his arm. Elena took it, and together they walked to the waiting Mercedes where Mikhail held the door. The drive into Manhattan took 30 minutes, and Adrian spent it briefing her in a low voice. Victor's club is called Siren, 3 floors. Main level is public, relatively speaking. Second floor is VIP. Third floor is where Victor conducts business. We won't go there tonight, just the VIP level. What am I looking for? Exits. Security positions. Who's watching what? Anyone who seems out of place. His hand found hers in the darkness of the car. But mostly, you're looking like you can't take your eyes off me. That's the easy part, Elena said before she could stop herself. Adrian's fingers tightened on hers. Careful, Elena. Say things like that and I might forget this is just an act. She turned to look at him, and in the passing streetlights, his face was all sharp angles and dangerous beauty. What if I'm not acting? The words hung between them, electric and terrifying. Adrian leaned closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face, thumb tracing her bottom lip with aching slowness. Then we're both in trouble, he murmured. The car stopped. Mikhail opened the door to reveal a building pulsing with music and lined with people waiting behind velvet ropes. The club's sign, a neon woman with a serpent's tail, cast everyone in crimson light. Adrian stepped out first, then turned to help Elena. The moment her heels touched pavement, conversation stopped. People stared. The crowd parted as Adrian guided her toward the entrance, his hand possessive on the small of her bare back. Mr. Volkov. The doorman moved the rope immediately. Welcome to Siren. Inside, the club was all dark luxury and pounding bass. Beautiful people danced under lights that turned their skin blue and purple and gold. The air smelled like expensive perfume and danger. Adrian guided Elena through the crowd, and she felt eyes following them, assessing, calculating. She recognized the weight of dangerous attention from her weeks in Adrian's world. These people operated by different rules, and one wrong move could be fatal. They climbed stairs to the second level where the music was quieter but the atmosphere more intense. This was where power gathered. Men in expensive suits conducting business over bottles of champagne that cost more than Elena used to make in a month. Women who looked like models draped over arms and laps. Adrian Volkov. The voice came from a corner booth where a man sat surrounded by guards. Victor Kozlov, Elena recognized him from the photo. Up close, he looked even more dangerous. What an unexpected pleasure. Victor. Adrian's voice was ice. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. Not at all. Please, join me. Victor's eyes slid to Elena, and she felt his gaze like oil on her skin. And who is this exquisite creature? Elena. Adrian's hand tightened on her waist. A friend. A friend! Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You have excellent taste, as always. Please sit. They slid into the booth, and Elena forced herself to breathe normally. This was the man who'd ordered her beaten, who'd used her body as a message to Adrian. She was sitting 3 feet from him, smiling like nothing was wrong, playing a role that felt more real with every passing second. I heard about the unfortunate incident a few weeks ago, Victor said conversationally. Some woman attacked near your estate. Terrible business. Terrible, Adrian agreed, his tone giving nothing away. But handled. Of course, you always handle things so efficiently. Victor poured champagne, sliding glasses toward them. To new understandings? Adrian lifted his glass. To clarity. They drank, and Elena tasted money and malice. Victor's guards positioned themselves strategically around the booth. She counted exits like Adrian had taught her. Memorized faces. Noted security cameras. So tell me, Elena. Victor turned his attention to her fully. How did you capture the interest of Manhattan's most elusive bachelor? Elena felt Adrian tense beside her, but she smiled and leaned into him slightly. I'm still trying to figure that out myself. She's being modest, Adrian said, his arm sliding around her shoulders. The gesture looked possessive, protective. Elena is remarkable, intelligent, beautiful, and kind enough to tolerate my difficult schedule. How did you meet? The question was casual, but Elena heard the trap underneath. Victor was fishing for information. One wrong answer and the whole carefully constructed cover would collapse. At a charity event? Elena said smoothly, surprising herself. Adrian was being terrible and antisocial in the corner. I told him if he was going to waste everyone's time being miserable, he should at least donate generously to make up for it. Victor laughed. And he didn't have you thrown out? I considered it, Adrian said with a slight smile. Then I realized she was right. A woman who tells Adrian Volkov the truth. Remarkable indeed. Victor studied them both. You make a striking couple. I hope you'll be very happy together. The words sounded like a threat wrapped in silk. They stayed another hour, making calculated small talk while Elena played her part. She laughed at appropriate moments, touched Adrian's arm, looked at him like he was the only person in the room, and increasingly, that last part wasn't acting. By the time they left Siren, Elena's face hurt from smiling, and her feet screamed from the heels. But she'd memorized everything Adrian had asked for: guard positions, exit routes, the way Victor's men communicated with subtle gestures. In the car, Adrian was silent for several minutes before speaking. You were perfect. I was terrified. You were perfect, he repeated. Victor suspected nothing. He knows something's wrong. I could see it in his eyes. Adrian turned to look at her, and in the darkness his expression was unreadable. You saw that? He's like you, calculating, always thinking 3 moves ahead. Elena met his gaze. What are you planning, Adrian? Nothing you need to worry about. I'm already involved. I sat across from the man who ordered me beaten and smiled like we were old friends. I think I deserve to know what I'm part of. For a long moment, Adrian said nothing. Then, Victor controls the East Side through fear and brutality. He's expanding, getting bolder. Eventually, he'll move on something I can't ignore, and we'll go to war. People will die. My people, his people, innocent people caught in the crossfire. So what's the alternative? I find a way to end this before it begins. Adrian's hand found hers again. You helped me tonight. The information you gathered, it's valuable. Good, then it was worth wearing this ridiculous dress. Adrian's mouth curved. For the record, that dress is anything but ridiculous. Heat rushed through Elena again. She should pull her hand away. Should remember this was business, that Adrian Volkov was dangerous, that getting closer to him was the worst idea she'd ever had. Instead, she laced her fingers through his. They sat in charged silence for the rest of the drive. When the car pulled through the estate gates, Mikhail opened Elena's door, and Adrian walked her to her suite like a gentleman from a different era. Thank you, he said at her door, for tonight, for trusting me. Thank you for giving me the choice. Adrian's eyes darkened. He reached up to brush a strand of hair from her face, and Elena's breath caught. For a moment she thought he might kiss her, wanted him to kiss her with an intensity that should have frightened her. But Adrian stepped back, breaking the spell. Good night, Elena. Good night. She watched him walk away, then slipped inside her suite and collapsed against the closed door. Her heart was racing, her hands were shaking, and she couldn't stop thinking about the way Adrian had looked at her tonight, like she was the most dangerous and valuable thing in his world. Elena changed out of the dress and washed off the makeup, trying to scrub away the feeling of Victor's eyes on her skin. But when she finally fell into bed, her dreams were full of Adrian's touch, his voice, the way he'd said her name like a promise and a prayer. Chimbat. The next morning, Elena woke to find a note slipped under her door. Thank you. AV. Attached was a check for $50,000. Elena stared at it, her stomach twisting. Payment for last night, for playing her part, for being useful. She crumpled the check and threw it across the room. When she found Adrian later that day, tracking him to his study through pure determination, She walked in without knocking and threw the crumpled check on his desk. I don't want your money. Adrian looked up from his laptop, one eyebrow raised. It's payment for services rendered. I'm not an escort. I'm not one of your employees. You don't get to pay me for spending time with you. Then what do you want? Elena opened her mouth, then closed it. What did she want? To go back to being invisible? To pretend the last 3 weeks hadn't happened? To forget how it felt when Adrian looked at her like she mattered? The truth, she said finally. You brought me to that club last night. You made me part of whatever game you're playing with Viktor Kozlov. I deserve to know what happens next. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he stood and moved to the windows overlooking his empire. Viktor is planning something, he said quietly. Something big. The information you gathered confirms it. He's consolidating power, bringing in outside muscle. Within the month, he'll make his move. And then? War. Unless I strike first. Elena moved to stand beside him, looking out at the city lights. Is that what you want? War? No. The admission seemed to cost him. I want to build something that lasts, something more than violence and fear, but Viktor won't let me. He sees any attempt at legitimacy as weakness. So you'll kill him? If I have to. Adrian turned to face her fully. Does that frighten you? It should. Elena knew it should. But standing this close to Adrian Volkov, seeing the weight he carried alone, she felt something other than fear. Yes, she admitted, but not in the way you think. How then? I'm frightened that I'm starting to understand you, that when I look at you I don't see a monster. I see someone trying to protect what's his in the only way he knows how. Adrian's hand came up to cup her face, and this time Elena didn't pull away. She leaned into his touch, letting herself feel the warmth of his palm against her cheek. You should be afraid of me, Adrian said roughly. You should run. I know. But you're not going to. No. He moved closer, and Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Adrian's other hand found her waist, pulling her against him, and she gasped at the contact, heat and strength and barely leashed control. Elena. Her name was a warning, a question. She answered by rising on her toes and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was electric. Adrian made a rough sound in his throat and deepened it, his hands tightening on her waist as Elena's fingers tangled in his hair. It was nothing like the careful performance at the club. This was raw and real and desperately honest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea, he murmured. I know. You're under my protection. Getting involved with you crosses every line. I don't care. Adrian pulled back to look at her, and Elena saw something in his eyes she'd never expected. Vulnerability, fear, hope. I can't promise you normal, he said quietly. I can't promise you safe. My world is violence and shadows and choices that haunt you. I don't want normal. Elena's hand came up to his face, thumb tracing his jaw. I want real. I want honest. I want you. Adrian kissed her again, slower this time, but no less intense. When he finally released her, they were both shaking. This changes everything, he said. Good. I'm tired of everything staying the same. A knock at the study door made them both turn. Mikhail stood in the entrance, his expression carefully neutral despite obviously interrupting something. Apologies, sir, but we have a situation. Adrian's entire demeanor shifted, the vulnerable man disappearing behind the cold crime lord in an instant. What kind of situation? Viktor just hit 3 of our shipments, simultaneously, and he left a message. Adrian's jaw tightened. Show me. Mikhail pulled up his phone, displaying a photo. It showed one of Adrian's warehouses, or what was left of it, burned to the ground, and spray-painted across the remaining wall in letters 10 feet high. Last warning. Elena felt Adrian's whole body go rigid with rage. Get everyone to the secure location, he said, his voice deadly calm. Full lockdown. I want every asset accounted for and every loose end tied up. We move tonight. Yes, sir. Mikhail disappeared. Adrian turned back to Elena, and she saw the war happening behind his eyes. The man who'd kissed her moments ago warring with the leader who had to make impossible choices. I have to handle this, he said. I know. Stay in the mansion. Don't leave for any reason. Mikhail will double the guards. Adrian, he kissed her once more, hard and fierce. I'll come back to you, I promise. Then he was gone, striding from the study with the cold purpose of a man going to war. Elena stood alone in the empty room, her lips still burning from his kiss, and wondered if she'd just made the best or worst decision of her life. Through the windows, she watched cars pull up to the mansion's entrance, watched Adrian's men arrive in dark suits with darker expressions, watched Adrian himself stride out, giving orders in rapid Russian, every inch the powerful crime lord the city feared. And Elena realized with terrifying clarity that she was falling in love with him. The mansion felt like a fortress under siege. Within an hour of Adrian's departure, armed guards appeared at every entrance. Mikhail stationed men in the gardens, on the rooftop, patrolling the perimeter with German shepherds that looked like they'd been trained to kill on command. Elena watched from her window as the estate transformed into something out of a military operation, and fear coiled tight in her stomach. Lucas found her there an hour later, his walking improving enough that he only needed a cane for support now. He stood beside her, taking in the guards and their weapons with worried eyes. This is bad, isn't it? Yes. Elena saw no point in lying. Where's Adrian? Handling it. She didn't know how else to describe what Adrian was doing. Starting a war? Ending one? The distinction felt meaningless. Lucas was quiet for a moment. You care about him. It wasn't a question, but Elena answered anyway. I do. Elena, he's dangerous. You know that, right? Whatever's happening between you two, I know exactly what he is. Elena turned to face her brother. And I care about him anyway. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm making a huge mistake. But for the first time in 3 years, Lucas, I feel like I'm actually living instead of just surviving. Lucas studied her face, and she saw the moment he understood. The moment he recognized that this wasn't some fleeting attraction or gratitude for Adrian's help. This was real, deep, terrifying. Just be careful, he said finally. Please. I can't lose you too. Elena pulled him into a hug, careful of his healing spine. You won't, I promise. But even as she said it, she wondered if it was a promise she could keep. The hours crawled past with agonizing slowness. Elena tried to read, tried to sleep, but her mind kept returning to Adrian. Where was he? What was he doing? The memory of their kiss burned through her thoughts, the desperate hunger in it, the way he'd held her like she was precious and breakable and essential all at once. I'll come back to you, I promise. She clung to those words like a lifeline. At 3 a.m, headlights swept through the gates. Elena bolted from bed and ran to the window, her heart hammering. 3 black SUVs pulled up to the mansion's entrance. Men emerged, some supporting others who moved with the careful stiffness of the injured. Mikhail appeared, directing them inside with sharp efficiency. And then Adrian stepped out of the lead vehicle. Even from a distance, Elena could see the blood on his white shirt, dark stains across his chest and arms. He moved with his usual fluid grace, but something in his posture suggested barely contained violence. He spoke briefly with Mikhail, gesturing toward the house, and then looked up, directly at Elena's window. Their eyes met across the darkness and distance. Adrian's face was shadowed, unreadable, but Elena felt the intensity of his gaze like a physical touch. He said something to Mikhail, then strode toward the mansion's entrance and disappeared inside. Elena's hands were shaking. The blood on his shirt, was it his? Someone else's? Both? She should stay in her room, should let Adrian handle whatever needed handling and wait for him to come to her when he was ready. But the fear clawing at her chest made waiting impossible. Elena grabbed a robe and slipped into the hallway. The mansion was alive with activity, men moving purposefully through corridors, voices speaking in rapid Russian, the controlled chaos of a military operation wrapping up. She moved through it all like a ghost, heading instinctively toward Adrian's private quarters on the 3rd floor. She'd never been there before. The staff didn't clean those rooms. Adrian kept that space entirely private, maintained by people Elena had never met. But she knew where it was, and the guard stationed outside the door recognized her. Miss Brooks? The taller guard stepped forward. Mr. Volkov left instructions that you're not to be disturbed. Is he hurt? No, miss, but he's... Then let me through. The guard hesitated, clearly torn between his orders and the authority in Elena's voice. Finally, he stepped aside. Your call, miss. But he's in a mood. Elena pushed through the door before she could lose her nerve. Adrian's suite was as luxurious as she'd expected, all dark wood and leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A bathroom door stood open, light spilling out, and she heard running water. She found Adrian at the sink, stripped to the waist, washing blood from his hands and arms. His shirt lay discarded on the floor, soaked crimson. In the mirror, his eyes met hers, and Elena's breath caught. I told the guards you weren't to be disturbed. They tried. Elena moved closer, taking in the blood, the tension in his shoulders, the controlled fury still radiating from him. Are you hurt? No. Whose blood is that? Does it matter? Adrian turned off the water and grabbed a towel. His torso was a map of old scars, bullet wounds, knife cuts, evidence of a violent life. You shouldn't be here, Elena. Where should I be? Sitting in my room pretending I don't care what happens to you? Yes. He faced her fully, and Elena saw the darkness in his eyes. Not coldness. Darkness. The shadow of whatever he'd done tonight. You should be as far from me as possible right now. Why? Because you're dangerous? Elena stepped closer instead of backing away. I already know that. I've always known that. Knowing and seeing are different things. Adrian's voice was rough. Tonight I did things that would make you run screaming if you knew the details. I hurt people, killed people, and the worst part is, I don't feel guilty about any of it. Did they deserve it? The question seemed to surprise him. Does anyone deserve death? The men who beat me in that alley did. Elena moved until she was directly in front of him. The ones who would have killed me if Mikhail hadn't found me. Victor's men who hurt innocent people to send messages. Yes, Adrian, some people deserve exactly what you give them. Adrian's hand shot out, gripping her wrist, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make his point. Don't romanticize what I am. Don't make me into some hero fighting for justice. I'm a criminal, Elena. I break the law. I hurt people. I trade in violence and fear. That's the truth. I know. Elena twisted her wrist free and pressed her palm against his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath scarred skin. But I also know you paid off debts you didn't owe. You brought my brother here and gave him treatment that's letting him walk again. You protect the people under your roof like they're family. You're not just a criminal, Adrian. You're complicated. Complicated. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's one word for it. What happened tonight? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved to the windows, staring out at his city like a king surveying a kingdom he'd built with blood and ruthlessness. Victor hit 3 of my warehouses, destroyed millions of dollars worth of product and equipment, killed 2 of my men, and injured 5 more. His voice was flat, reciting facts. So I hit him back. Harder. His operations on the east side are burning as we speak. His supply chain is in ruins. His lieutenants are either dead or running. And Victor? Alive. For now. Adrian's reflection in the glass was hard as stone. I sent him a message of my own. He has 48 hours to leave New York, or I'll hunt him down personally. Elena absorbed this, trying to reconcile the man who'd kissed her so tenderly hours ago with the crime lord who'd just declared war on half the city. But maybe that was the point. Maybe Adrian contained multitudes, violence and gentleness, ruthlessness and protection, darkness and the desperate desire for something better. Will he leave? She asked. No, men like Victor don't run. They double down. Adrian turned to face her, which means this gets worse before it gets better. And you need to understand what that means for you. What does it mean? It means Victor will look for my weakness, the fastest way to hurt me. His eyes burned into hers, and after seeing us together at Siren, he knows exactly where to aim. The implication hit Elena like cold water. You think he'll come after me? I know he will. It's what I would do. Adrian crossed the space between them in 3 strides, which is why you can't stay here anymore. Elena's world tilted. What? I have a safe house upstate, completely secure off the grid. You and Lucas will go there until this is finished. No. This isn't a discussion, Elena. You're right, it's not. Elena planted her feet, refusing to back down despite the dangerous edge in Adrian's voice. Because I'm not running. I'm not hiding while you fight this war alone. You don't have a choice. I always have a choice, and I choose to stay. Adrian's control cracked. He grabbed her shoulders, pulling her against him, his face inches from hers. Don't you understand? If Victor gets his hands on you, he'll use you to destroy me. He'll hurt you in ways that make what happened in that alley look merciful. And His voice broke. I can't survive that. I can't watch you suffer because of me. Elena saw it then, the fear beneath the anger, the terror hiding behind cold control. Adrian Volkov, who ruled Manhattan's underworld without flinching, was afraid of losing her. Then don't let him take me. Elena's hands came up to frame his face. Keep me close. Protect me the way you know how. But don't send me away, Adrian, please. You're asking me to gamble with your life. I'm asking you to trust that I know the risks, and I'm choosing this anyway. She pulled him down until their foreheads touched. I'm choosing you. Adrian made a sound somewhere between a groan and a prayer. Then he was kissing her, desperate and hungry and full of everything he couldn't say with words. Elena kissed him back with equal intensity, her fingers tangling in his hair, her body molding against his. This wasn't like their first kiss. This was raw need and barely leashed control. Adrian's hands roamed her body through the thin robe, learning her curves, claiming her. When he backed her toward the bed, Elena went willingly, desire burning away fear and common sense. He laid her down on silk sheets, his body covering hers, and Elena gasped at the contact. Heat and strength and the controlled power of a dangerous man choosing gentleness. Adrian's mouth moved from her lips to her throat, teeth grazing sensitive skin, and Elena arched beneath him. Tell me to stop, he murmured against her collarbone. Tell me this is crazy, and we should wait, and I'll stop. Don't stop. Elena's hands explored the scarred landscape of his back. Don't ever stop. Adrian groaned and captured her mouth again. His hand slid beneath her robe, finding bare skin, and Elena felt herself falling into sensation. Nothing mattered except this moment, this man, the connection building between them that felt inevitable as gravity. But then Adrian's phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. He pulled back with a curse, his breathing ragged. I have to... I know. Elena touched his face, memorizing the way he looked in this moment, disheveled, wanting, human. Answer it. Adrian kissed her once more, then rolled away to grab his phone. Elena watched his expression shift as he read the messages, saw the cold crime lord reassert control over the vulnerable man. Victor just issued a public challenge, he said, his voice tight. He's claiming I'm weak, losing control, hiding behind a woman. Adrian's jaw clenched. He wants a meeting, tomorrow night, neutral territory, to settle this once and for all. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap. Adrian stood, already pulling on a clean shirt. But I have to take it. If I don't, I look weak. And in this world, weakness is death. Elena sat up, clutching the robe around herself. What are you going to do? What I do best. I'm going to walk into Victor's trap and turn it back on him. He paused at the door, looking back at her. But you need to promise me something. What? If this goes wrong, if something happens to me, Mikhail has instructions. He'll get you and Lucas somewhere safe, somewhere Victor can't reach you. Promise me you'll go. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, but she saw the desperate need in Adrian's eyes, and she understood. He needed to know she'd survive even if he didn't. I promise, she whispered. Adrian nodded, then disappeared into the hallway, already shouting orders in Russian. Elena sat alone in his bed, surrounded by his scent, and tried not to think about what tomorrow night might bring. She didn't sleep, couldn't sleep. By the time dawn broke over Manhattan, Elena had made a decision that would probably get her killed. She found Mikhail in the security office, surrounded by computer screens showing every angle of the estate. He looked up when she entered, exhaustion evident in the lines around his eyes. Miss Brooks, you should be resting. I need your help. Mikhail studied her carefully. With what? Adrian's meeting with Victor tonight. I want to be there. Absolutely not. I'm not asking permission. Elena moved closer, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. I'm asking for your help because I'm going with or without it. But with your help, I might actually survive. Mr. Volkov would have my head. Mr. Volkov won't know until it's too late. Elena sat down across from him. Look, I understand the risk, but Victor thinks I'm Adrian's weakness. What if we use that? What if we turn his assumptions against him? Mikhail leaned back, his expression unreadable. You're suggesting using yourself as bait. I'm suggesting we give Victor exactly what he expects to see, Adrian's beautiful distraction. Meanwhile, Adrian does whatever he's actually planning. And when Victor tries to use you against Adrian? Elena's smile was sharp as broken glass. Then he learns I'm not as helpless as I look. For a long moment, Mikhail said nothing. Then he pulled up a file on his computer. You'd need training, basic self-defense, weapon handling, how to identify threats. So train me. We have all day. Adrian will kill me for this. Only if we survive long enough for him to find out. Elena extended her hand. Do we have a deal? Mikhail looked at her hand, then at her face, and she saw the moment he made his decision. He shook her hand firmly. You're either very brave or very stupid. Can't I be both? He almost smiled. Meet me in the basement gym in 20 minutes. And Miss Brooks? Don't make me regret this. The next 8 hours were brutal. Mikhail put Elena through a crash course in survival that left her bruised, exhausted, and significantly more dangerous than she'd been that morning. He taught her how to break holds, where to strike for maximum damage, how to use everyday objects as weapons. He showed her how to identify exits, assess threats, read body language. You're not trying to win a fight, he explained as she practiced breaking a chokehold for the 20th time. You're trying to survive long enough for help to arrive. Make noise, cause chaos, run if you can. And if I can't run, Mikhail handed her a small knife, elegantly deadly. Then you make them regret touching you. By late afternoon, Elena could barely move. Every muscle screamed. But she could also disarm someone holding a gun, break free from restraints, and knew 17 different ways to incapacitate an attacker. You're a fast learner, Mikhail said as they wrapped up. Natural fighter's instinct. But, Elena, his expression turned serious. Training isn't the same as real violence. When it happens, it's fast and messy and terrifying. Don't freeze. That's how people die. I won't freeze. Good. He checked his watch. Adrian's leaving in 2 hours. You'll ride in the second car with me. Stay out of sight until I give the signal. And if things go wrong, you follow my instructions without question. Understood? Understood. Elena returned to her suite and found Lucas waiting, his face tight with worry. Where have you been? I've been looking everywhere. He stopped, taking in her disheveled appearance, the bruises forming on her arms. What the hell happened? Training. Elena moved past him to the closet. And before you start, yes, I know it's dangerous. Yes, I know I could get hurt. And no, I'm not changing my mind. You're going to the meeting tonight. Yes. Lucas wheeled himself in front of her, blocking her path. Elena, this is insane. Adrian has trained killers protecting him. He doesn't need you there. It's not about need. Elena met her brother's eyes. It's about choice. Adrian's been fighting alone his whole life. Everyone around him either fears him or wants something from him. I'm choosing to stand beside him, not behind him. Can't you understand that? Lucas was quiet for a long moment. I understand you're in love with him. Elena's breath caught. Hearing it said aloud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely true. Yes, she said simply. I am. Then be careful. Lucas grabbed her hand. Because losing Mom was hard enough. I can't lose you too. Elena pulled him into a fierce hug. You won't, I promise. But as she dressed for the meeting, practical clothes, dark colors, the knife Mikhail had given her hidden in her boot, Elena wondered if that was another promise she couldn't keep. Bars. The meeting was set for midnight at an abandoned warehouse in Red Hook. Neutral territory, theoretically, though Elena suspected Victor had chosen it specifically for the tactical advantages it offered. Lots of entrances, lots of places for his men to hide, difficult to secure. She rode in the second SUV with Mikhail and 3 other guards, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through the tinted windows, she watched Brooklyn roll past, familiar streets made strange and threatening by darkness and circumstance. "Remember the plan," Mikhail said quietly. "Stay in the car until I signal. If shooting starts, you hit the floor and stay down. If I tell you to run, you run and don't look back." Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. The convoy pulled up to the warehouse. Adrian's car stopped first, and she watched him emerge flanked by 6 guards. Even from a distance, he commanded attention, power and danger wrapped in an expensive suit. He scanned his surroundings with practiced efficiency, then strode toward the warehouse entrance. He didn't know she was here, didn't know she'd defied his protection and inserted herself into the most dangerous situation of her life. Elena sent up a silent prayer that he'd forgive her if they survived the night. Victor's cars arrived from the opposite direction. More men, more guns. The crime lord himself stepped out, and even from 50 feet away, Elena could see his cold smile. He said something to Adrian, gestured toward the warehouse. Both groups moved inside. "Now," Mikhail said. Elena slipped from the car and followed him toward a side entrance Mikhail had identified during the planning. They moved in shadow, keeping low, using shipping containers as cover. The warehouse loomed ahead, all broken windows and rusted metal. Inside, voices echoed. Adrian and Victor, their conversation just audible. "You're losing control, Volkov." Victor's voice dripped contempt. "First you let some girl make you weak. Then you start this pathetic war you can't win. It's embarrassing." "The only embarrassment," Adrian replied coldly, "is how badly you've overestimated your position. You're bleeding money, Victor. Your operations are crippled. Your men are deserting. And you think you can negotiate from strength? I think I can end you tonight and take everything you've built." Elena heard the threat in those words, saw Mikhail's hand move to his weapon. She pressed herself against a stack of crates, watching through a gap as the 2 crime lords faced each other. "You're welcome to try," Adrian said, "but before you do, you should know something." "What's that?" Adrian smiled, and it was the coldest thing Elena had ever seen. "You fell for the oldest trick in the book. While you've been posturing and making threats, my people have been dismantling your empire piece by piece. Your suppliers? Mine now. Your distributors? Working for me. Your lieutenant in Chicago? Currently sitting in a federal holding cell thanks to an anonymous tip." Victor's face went white. "You're lying." "Am I? Check your phone. I'll wait." "Oh." The crime lord pulled out his phone, and Elena watched his expression shift from anger to shock to pure rage as he scrolled through what must have been messages confirming everything Adrian had said. "You son of a bitch! Here's what happens next." Adrian's voice cut through Victor's fury like a blade. "You leave New York tonight. You take what's left of your operation and disappear. In exchange, I let you live. And if I refuse, then tomorrow morning the FBI receives evidence of every crime you've committed for the past 10 years. Trafficking, murder, racketeering, all of it documented and gift-wrapped. You'll spend the rest of your life in a federal prison, if you survive that long." Victor's hand moved toward his jacket, and Elena's breath caught. This was it. The moment everything went wrong. But before Victor could draw his weapon, Adrian's men moved. 6 guns appeared, all pointed at Victor and his guards. The crime lord froze, his hand still inside his jacket. "Don't," Adrian said quietly. "You're outgunned and outmaneuvered. Accept the loss and walk away while you still can." For a long moment, no one moved. The warehouse was silent except for distant traffic and the pounding of Elena's heart. Then Victor slowly removed his hand from his jacket, empty. "This isn't over, Volkov." "Yes," Adrian said. "It is. You just don't know it yet." Victor turned to leave, his men following, their retreat tense with barely suppressed violence. Elena watched them go, relief flooding through her so intense she felt dizzy. And then she saw the shadow moving behind Adrian. One of Victor's men, young, desperate, probably trying to prove himself, had circled around while everyone's attention was focused on the confrontation. He emerged from behind a shipping container with his gun raised, aimed directly at Adrian's back. Elena didn't think. She moved on pure instinct, drawing the knife from her boot and running forward. She had maybe 3 seconds before the gunman noticed her, 2 seconds before he could fire. She closed the distance and drove the knife into his shoulder, just as his finger tightened on the trigger. The gun went off, deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet went wide, ricocheting off metal. The gunman screamed and spun, backhanding Elena across the face with enough force to send her sprawling. Then chaos erupted. Adrian's men opened fire. Victor's people returned it. The warehouse became a war zone of bullets and shouting and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Elena hit the ground hard, her vision swimming, tasting blood. "Elena!" Adrian's voice cut through the chaos. Then he was there, covering her body with his, shielding her from the violence. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Saving your life," she managed. "By getting yourself killed?" But his hands were checking her for injuries, gentle despite the fury in his voice. "Can you move?" "Yes." "Then we're leaving. Now." He hauled her up and half carried, half dragged her toward the exit. Mikhail appeared beside them, providing covering fire. Behind them, the warehouse was still erupting with violence, but Adrian's focus was entirely on getting Elena to safety. They burst into the night air and ran for the cars. Adrian shoved Elena into the back of his SUV, then climbed in after her. Mikhail slammed the door and the driver gunned the engine. As they pulled away, Elena looked back to see Victor's cars fleeing in the opposite direction. The warehouse was burning now, flames licking through broken windows, lighting up the Brooklyn night. "Are you insane?" Adrian rounded on her, his eyes blazing. "What the hell were you thinking?" "I was thinking you needed backup." "I had backup! Trained professionals with guns and tactical training. Not—" He gestured at her helplessly. "Not you." "I saved your life," Elena shot back. "That gunman was behind you. Your professionals didn't see him. I did." Adrian's jaw worked. "You could have been killed. So could you." "That's different." "Why? Because you're important and I'm expendable?" "Because I chose this life," Adrian's voice cracked. "You didn't. You're supposed to be safe, Elena. You're supposed to be the one thing in my world that isn't touched by violence and death. And instead you're—" He broke off, running his hands through his hair. "You're bleeding." Elena touched her face and felt the wetness. The gunman's backhand had split her lip and left her cheek swelling. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing." Adrian pulled out a handkerchief and pressed it gently against her lip. His hands were shaking. "You could have died tonight. Because of me. Because you were trying to protect me." "Yes." Elena covered his hand with hers. "And I'd do it again." "Don't." The word was almost pleading. "Please, Elena. Don't ask me to watch you risk yourself for me. I can't." His eyes closed. "I can't survive losing you." Elena shifted closer, wrapping her arms around him despite the pain in her ribs. Adrian held her like she might disappear, his face buried in her hair, his breathing ragged. "You're not going to lose me," she whispered. "We're both going to survive this. Together." The drive back to the mansion passed in tense silence. By the time they arrived, reports were already coming in. Victor's remaining men had scattered. The warehouse fire was being called an industrial accident, and Victor himself had disappeared, likely fleeing the city. It was over. Adrian helped Elena from the car, then picked her up entirely when she stumbled. She wanted to protest, to insist she could walk, but exhaustion and pain made her lean into his strength instead. He carried her straight to his private suite, setting her carefully on his bed, the same bed where they'd almost made love the night before. Dr. Petrov appeared within minutes, examining her injuries with practiced efficiency. "Mild concussion, split lip, extensive bruising," he announced. "But nothing permanent. You'll heal." After he left, Adrian sat beside her and took her hand. "You're staying in my suite tonight, where I can keep an eye on you." "Adrian, please." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I need to know you're safe. After tonight, I need—" He trailed off, unable to finish. Elena squeezed his hand. "Okay." Later, after she'd showered and changed into one of Adrian's shirts, they lay together in the darkness. Adrian held her carefully, mindful of her injuries, his breathing slow and steady against her hair. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "About sending you away. About thinking I could protect you by keeping you at a distance. Tonight proved that keeping you close is the only way I don't lose my mind with worry." Elena shifted to look at him. "Does this mean you're done trying to send me to safe houses upstate?" "This means I'm accepting what I've known since the moment I saw you on that staircase in the designer dress. His hand cupped her face. You're mine, Elena. Not as property or possession, but as the person I choose. The person I... He hesitated. The person you what? Adrian's eyes met hers, vulnerable and open in a way she'd never seen. The person I love. The words hung in the air between them, precious and terrifying, and absolutely true. Elena felt tears burn her eyes. I love you too, she whispered. Even though you're impossible and dangerous and overprotective, I love you, Adrian Volkov. He kissed her then, gentle and reverent, like she was something sacred, and as Elena lost herself in his touch, she understood that this, them, was worth every risk, every danger, every moment of fear. Because love, real love, was the most dangerous thing of all. And Elena had never felt more alive. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and the warmth of Adrian's body wrapped around hers. For a moment she lay perfectly still, absorbing the reality of where she was. In his bed, in his arms, safe despite everything that had happened the night before. Adrian's breathing was slow and even against her neck, one arm draped protectively across her waist. Elena had never seen him sleep before, had never witnessed the vulnerability of him completely at rest. The sharp edges that defined him during waking hours had softened. He looked younger somehow, less burdened. She shifted carefully, trying not to wake him, but his arm tightened immediately. Don't move. His voice was rough with sleep. Just stay. Elena settled back against him. How long have you been awake? Long enough to convince myself you're real and not some dream I conjured. I'm very real. She winced as her bruised ribs protested. The pain confirms it. Adrian sat up immediately, his expression shifting to concern. How bad is it? Should I call Dr. Petrov? I'm fine. Just sore. Elena caught his hand before he could reach for his phone. Adrian, I've survived worse. Remember? His jaw tightened at the reminder of the alley, of how they'd met. That doesn't make this hurt any less. But it means I know how to heal. She pulled him back down beside her. And this time, I have you to help. Adrian studied her face, his fingers tracing the bruise on her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Last night, when I saw that gunman behind me and realized you'd thrown yourself into danger, he stopped, his voice breaking slightly. I've never been that terrified, not in my entire life. I couldn't let him shoot you. You should have. Better me than you. Elena sat up despite the pain, forcing Adrian to meet her eyes. Don't ever say that. Don't ever suggest your life matters less than mine. It does. The words were simple, absolute. Elena, I've done things. Terrible things. Things I can never take back or make right. My hands have blood on them that will never wash clean. But you... His palm cupped her face. You're good. Pure. You save people instead of destroying them. The world needs more of you and less of me. That's not how this works. Elena covered his hand with hers. You don't get to decide who deserves to live based on some moral scorecard. We both matter, Adrian. Equally. You don't understand? Then help me understand. Elena's voice was firm. Tell me what haunts you. Tell me why you think you deserve less than anyone else. Adrian pulled away, moving to the windows where the morning light carved his profile in sharp relief. For a long moment, Elena thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice distant. I was 17 when my father died. Cancer, slow and painful. Before he went, he told me I had to take over the business. The real business, not the legitimate front companies. Adrian's hands curled into fists. I didn't want it. I had plans. College, maybe law school, a normal life. But my father said I had responsibilities. Family legacy. Debts to honor. Elena listened in silence, sensing he needed to get this out. My first kill was 3 weeks after the funeral. A man who'd been stealing from us. My father's lieutenant said I had to prove myself, show I wasn't weak like they thought. Adrian's voice was hollow. I remember looking at him, this middle-aged guy who probably had kids, a wife, a life, and I remember thinking if I pulled the trigger, there was no going back. I'd become exactly what my father wanted. What did you do? I pulled the trigger. Adrian turned to face her. And then I pulled it again on the next person. And the next. until it stopped feeling like murder and started feeling like business, until I stopped seeing people and started seeing obstacles or assets or threats. But you see me, Elena said quietly. You saw Lucas. You see Dr. Petrov and Mikhail and everyone else in this house as more than just assets. Because you remind me I'm still human underneath the monster. Adrian moved back to the bed, sitting on the edge. That's why losing you would destroy me, Elena. Not because I love you, though I do, but because you're proof I haven't completely lost my soul yet. Elena's heart broke for him. For the boy who'd been forced into a life he never wanted. For the man who carried the weight of impossible choices and unmeasurable guilt. She reached for him, pulling him close. You're not a monster, she whispered against his chest. Monsters don't pay off strangers' medical debts. They don't save their housekeeper's paralyzed brother. They don't lie awake worried about keeping someone safe. Elena, and monsters definitely don't fall in love. She pulled back to look at him. Whatever you've done, whoever you've had to become to survive, you're still capable of love. That means you're still human, still worth saving. Adrian's eyes glistened with something that might have been tears. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. Elena kissed him softly. You choose who you want to be from this moment forward. The past is done. You can't change it. But the future, that's still unwritten. He kissed her back deeper this time, and Elena felt the desperation in it, the need to believe her words, to accept the redemption she was offering. When they finally broke apart, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Mikhail's voice came through. Sir, we have a situation. Adrian's entire demeanor shifted, the vulnerable man disappearing behind the cold crime lord. Come in. Mikhail entered, his expression grim. Victor's car was found abandoned at the Canadian border, empty. No sign of him or his remaining men. He ran. Adrian stood, already moving toward his closet. Smart move on his part. There's more. The FBI contacted our lawyer an hour ago. They want to meet with you. Today. Elena's stomach dropped. The FBI? Why? Probably about the warehouse fire last night. Adrian pulled on fresh clothes with efficient movements. Or Victor's disappearance. Or any number of things they've been trying to pin on me for years. What are you going to do? What I always do. Cooperate fully while revealing absolutely nothing. He straightened his tie, transforming before Elena's eyes into the polished businessman whose legitimate empire employed thousands. Mikhail, arrange the meeting for this afternoon. My lawyer's office. And increase security on the estate. If the feds are sniffing around, others might see it as an opportunity. Already done, sir. After Mikhail left, Adrian turned to Elena. Stay in the mansion today. Don't go anywhere without guards. I don't trust that Victor's really gone. Be careful with the FBI. Always am. He kissed her once more, lingering. I'll be back before dinner. We need to talk about what happens next. What do you mean? I mean, Victor running doesn't end this. There are others who'll see his failure as an opening. The next few weeks are going to be dangerous while I consolidate control. Adrian's eyes were serious. And you need to decide if this is really the life you want. Because once things settle, once the dust clears, you and Lucas could leave. I could set you up somewhere safe, somewhere far from all of this. Elena's chest tightened. Is that what you want? For me to leave? I want you to have a choice. A real one, not one made in the chaos of violence and fear. His hand cupped her face. Think about it, please. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with thoughts that spiraled in a dozen different directions. She found Lucas in the physical therapy room, working through his exercises with Dr. Petrov's supervision. Her brother could walk nearly 30 feet now, without assistance, and the joy on his face when he saw her was pure and bright. Elena, did you see? I made it to the window and back. I saw. She hugged him carefully. I'm so proud of you. After Dr. Petrov left them alone, Lucas studied her face. You look like someone kicked your puppy. What's wrong? Elena sank into a chair. Adrian asked me to think about leaving, once things calmed down. He'd set us up somewhere safe, away from all this. And that's bad because I don't want to leave. The admission felt raw. I love him, Lucas, really love him. And the thought of walking away, even if it's safer, feels like cutting out part of my heart. Lucas wheeled his chair closer. But maybe he's right. Maybe you and I could have normal lives somewhere else. You could finish school. I could go to college like I'd planned. We could be ordinary people with ordinary problems instead of living in a crime lord's mansion surrounded by armed guards. Except we'd be miserable, Lucas said quietly. At least you would. I see how you look at him, Elena, and more importantly, I see how he looks at you. Like you're the sun, and he's been living in darkness his whole life. That doesn't mean it's right or safe. When has anything we've done been safe? Lucas grabbed her hand. Mom died. I got paralyzed. We were buried in debt and barely surviving. Then Adrian came into our lives and gave us a chance to actually live instead of just existing. Yeah, it's dangerous, but it's also real, and you deserve something real after everything you've sacrificed. What about you? Don't you deserve normal? I deserve a sister who's happy, who's in love and loved back, who doesn't work herself to death trying to save me. Lucas's eyes were fierce. If Adrian makes you happy, and he does, I can see it, then that's enough for me. We'll figure out the rest. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. When did you get so wise? Around the time my big sister taught me that love means showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Lucas squeezed her hand. So show up, Elena. Stop running from the best thing that's ever happened to you, just because you're scared. She pulled him into a hug, grateful beyond words for this person who knew her better than anyone. I love you. You know that? I know? Now go figure out how to tell Adrian you're staying, because trust me, he needs to hear it. Elena spent the afternoon restless, pacing her suite, trying to organize her thoughts. Everything Lucas had said was true. Everything Adrian had offered, the escape, the safety, the normal life, was tempting in theory. But in practice, the thought of leaving made her chest ache. She'd been invisible for so long, moving through the world like a ghost, present but not seen, alive but not living. Adrian had changed that. He'd seen her, really seen her, and in seeing her had made her visible to herself. How could she walk away from that? How could she choose safety over the terrifying, exhilarating reality of being fully alive? She couldn't. She wouldn't. Elena was pulling on her shoes, planning to find Adrian the moment he returned when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Elena Brooks? The voice was male, unfamiliar, with a faint accent. Who is this? A friend. Or I could be, if you're smart. A pause. I have information about Viktor Kozlov. Information Adrian Volkov would pay dearly for. Elena's blood ran cold. How did you get this number? That doesn't matter. What matters is Viktor didn't run to Canada. He's still in New York, and he's planning something big, something that will hurt Adrian badly. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm offering you a deal. Meet me alone, and I'll tell you everything. Then you can decide whether to warn Adrian or not. Every instinct screamed this was a trap. I'm not meeting a stranger alone. Then Adrian's blood is on your hands when Viktor makes his move. The voice turned cold. 1 hour, the old pier at Red Hook. Come alone, or don't come at all. But don't say I didn't give you a chance to save the man you love. The line went dead. Elena stared at her phone, heart racing. This was insane. Obviously a trap. She should tell Mikhail immediately, let Adrian's people handle it. But what if it was real? What if Viktor really was planning something, and this mysterious caller genuinely had information that could save lives? She thought of Adrian's face when he talked about his first kill, the weight he carried, the violence that haunted him. If she could prevent more bloodshed, prevent Adrian from having to add more deaths to his conscience, wasn't that worth the risk? Elena grabbed her jacket and the knife Mikhail had given her. She'd go to the pier, but she wouldn't be stupid about it. She'd stay in sight of the main road, keep her phone ready to call for help, and run at the first sign of danger. She was almost to the door when she stopped. If something went wrong, if this really was a trap, no one would know where she'd gone. Elena pulled out her phone and sent a text to Mikhail. Got a call about Viktor, going to Red Hook Pier to check it out. Probably nothing, but wanted you to know where I am. His response came immediately. Do not go anywhere. I'm coming to you now. But Elena was already moving. Slipping out through a side entrance the guards didn't watch as closely. She'd be quick, in and out, back before anyone even realized she'd left. Famous last words, she thought grimly. The Uber ride to Red Hook took 20 minutes through afternoon traffic. Elena spent it alternating between certainty this was the right decision and terror she was making a fatal mistake. But the thought of Victor planning something while they all thought he'd fled kept her moving forward. The pier was exactly as rundown as she'd expected. Abandoned warehouses, rusted metal, the smell of salt water and decay. Elena's driver looked dubious. "You sure this is where you want to be, miss?" "I'm meeting someone. I'll be fine." He drove away, and Elena was alone with the wind off the harbor and the growing certainty she'd made a terrible mistake. She pulled out her phone to call Mikhail to admit this was stupid and ask for extraction. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Elena spun. A man stepped from behind a shipping container. 30s, hard eyes, expensive suit. Not Victor, but she recognized the cold calculation in his expression. Someone who worked for Victor. "Where's your boss?" Elena kept her voice steady. "Closer than Adrian Volkov thinks." The man smiled. "Thanks for making this easy, Miss Brooks. Victor thought we'd have to snatch you from the mansion. But here you are, gift-wrapped and alone." Elena's hand moved toward the knife in her boot, but 3 more men emerged from the shadows, all armed, all watching her with the predatory focus of wolves cornering prey. "Adrian will kill you for this," she said, "only if he finds out in time. And by then, you'll be far away, leverage to make him do exactly what Victor wants." The man gestured. "We can do this easy or hard. Your choice." Elena ran. She made it maybe 10 feet before they caught her, hands grabbing her arms, her legs, lifting her off the ground. She fought like Mikhail had taught her, kicking, biting, making as much noise as possible. The knife fell from her boot and clattered across concrete, useless. "Feisty." One of the men laughed. "Victor said you had spirit. He's looking forward to breaking it." A black van pulled up, side door already open. They were dragging her toward it when gunshots cracked through the air. The man holding her left arm went down, then the one on her right. Elena hit the ground hard, rolling, scrambling for cover behind a concrete barrier. More gunshots, controlled and precise. Victor's remaining men returned fire, but they were outgunned. Then Mikhail was there, appearing from nowhere, his gun trained on the last standing attacker. "Drop it! Now!" The man dropped his weapon and raised his hands. More of Adrian's men emerged from positions Elena hadn't even noticed. They'd been there the whole time, watching, waiting. Her text to Mikhail. They'd tracked her phone, followed her, set up an ambush of their own. Mikhail grabbed the surviving attacker by his collar. "Where's Victor?" "I don't—" Mikhail hit him hard enough that Elena heard teeth crack. "Try again." The man spat blood. "Warehouse, 3 blocks south. He's there with the rest of our crew." "How many?" "Maybe 15. But you'll never—" Mikhail hit him again, and the man went limp. 2 of Adrian's guards zip-tied him and dragged him toward a waiting car. Mikhail turned to Elena, and the fury in his eyes made her step back. "What the hell were you thinking?" His voice was tight with controlled rage. "You could have been killed, worse than killed." "I'm sorry, I thought—" "You thought wrong." He grabbed her arm, not rough, but firm. "Get in the car, now. Adrian's on his way, and when he finds out what you did, my anger is going to look like a gentle suggestion compared to his." Elena let herself be guided into an SUV, her whole body shaking with delayed shock. She'd been an idiot. A reckless, stupid idiot who'd nearly gotten herself kidnapped because she'd thought she could handle a situation she had no business being in. The drive to the warehouse took 3 minutes. By the time they arrived, Adrian's car was already there, and Elena's heart sank. He stood with a group of his men, all armed, all preparing for what looked like an assault. Then Adrian saw her. The relief that flashed across his face lasted maybe 2 seconds before fury replaced it. He strode to the car, yanked open her door, and pulled her out with barely controlled violence. "What the fuck were you thinking?" His voice was low, dangerous, shaking with rage. "You left the mansion alone. You went to meet unknown contacts in an abandoned location without backup. Do you have any idea—" He stopped, his jaw working. "I thought you were dead." When Mikhail called and said Victor's men had you, I thought I'd lost you. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't cut it. Adrian's hands gripped her shoulders. You could have been taken, tortured, used against me, and it would have been my fault for letting you into this world in the first place. You didn't let me, Elena shot back, finding her own anger beneath the fear. I chose this. I chose you. And yes, I made a mistake coming here alone, but I was trying to help. I was trying to get information that could save you. I don't need you to save me. I need you to be safe. Well, maybe I'm tired of being safe while you risk everything. Elena's voice rose to match his. Maybe I'm tired of sitting in that mansion waiting to hear if you're coming back alive. Maybe I want to fight beside you instead of hiding behind you. Then you're going to get yourself killed, Adrian's voice broke. And I won't survive that. He pulled her against him, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. Elena felt him shaking, felt the fear radiating off him in waves, and understood this wasn't really about anger, it was about terror. About a man who'd lost everyone he'd ever cared about and was facing the possibility of losing her too. I'm okay, she whispered against his chest. I'm here. I'm safe. This time. Adrian pulled back just enough to look at her. But Victor's in that warehouse right now, and this ends tonight, one way or another. Then let's end it. Elena touched his face. Together. Absolutely not. I'm not asking permission. Elena's voice was firm. I'm telling you I'm done watching from the sidelines. Whatever happens next, we face it together or not at all. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, looked like he wanted to lock her in the car and keep her away from the violence about to unfold. But something in Elena's expression must have convinced him she meant every word. Stay behind me, he said finally. And if I tell you to run, you run. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her hard, desperate, then turned to his men. We're going in. Mikhail, take the north entrance. Dmitri, south. I want eyes on all exits. Victor doesn't leave this warehouse alive. The assault was swift and brutal. Adrian's men moved with military precision, clearing rooms with controlled violence. Elena stayed close to Adrian like she'd promised, her heart hammering as gunfire echoed through the cavernous space. They found Victor on the second floor, cornered with 5 of his remaining men. He smiled when he saw Adrian, but it didn't reach his eyes. Adrian Volkov, come to finish this personally? You should have left when I gave you the chance. Adrian's gun never wavered. Now you don't get that option. Kill me, and someone else takes my place. This city is too valuable. The war never ends. You're wrong. Adrian's voice was cold as winter. The war ends tonight, along with anyone stupid enough to challenge me after seeing what happens to those who try. Victor's eyes slid to Elena. And her? Your weakness made flesh? Killing me won't protect her from the next person who wants to hurt you. No. Adrian stepped forward. But it sends a message. Touch what's mine and die screaming. The standoff lasted maybe 5 seconds. Then Victor's men made their move, and the warehouse erupted in gunfire. Elena hit the ground as Adrian returned fire with deadly accuracy. The fight was chaos, noise and smoke and the copper smell of blood. But through it all, Adrian stood between her and danger, protecting her even as he systematically eliminated threats. When the smoke cleared, Victor lay on the concrete, bleeding from multiple wounds. His men were dead or dying. Adrian stood over him, gun pointed at his head. Any last words? Victor smiled through bloody teeth. This changes nothing. You're still what you are, a killer, a monster. And she... He looked at Elena. She'll realize it eventually. Leave you for someone clean. Maybe. Adrian's finger tightened on the trigger. But at least I'll die knowing I protected what I love. The gunshot echoed through the warehouse, final and absolute. Elena closed her eyes, but she didn't turn away. This was Adrian's world. This was the reality of loving him. And if she was going to stay, if she was going to choose this life, she needed to face it with open eyes. When she looked again, Victor was dead. The threat that had hung over them for weeks was gone. But Adrian stood perfectly still, staring at the body, and Elena saw the weight settling back on his shoulders. Another death? Another choice he couldn't take back. She stood and went to him, taking his hand. It's over. Yes, Adrian's voice was hollow. It's over. They left the warehouse together, Mikhail and the others handling cleanup. In the car, Adrian was silent, staring at his hands like he could still see the blood. Talk to me, Elena said quietly. I just killed a man in front of you. I let you see exactly what I am. He finally looked at her. And I need to know if that changes anything. If seeing me like that makes you want to leave after all. Elena thought about his question. Really thought about it. She'd watched the man she loved kill someone, had witnessed violence she'd only seen in movies. By all rights, she should be horrified, terrified, ready to run. But all she felt was relief that Adrian was safe, that the threat was gone, that they could finally breathe. It doesn't change anything, she said, because I already knew who you are, what you're capable of, and I chose you anyway. I choose you still. Adrian's eyes closed, and Elena saw a tear slide down his cheek. I don't deserve you. Probably not. She leaned into him. But you're stuck with me regardless. He pulled her close, and they sat like that as the car carried them back to the mansion. Back to safety. Back to the life they were building together despite everything trying to tear them apart. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats. The reality of Adrian's world didn't end with Victor's death. But tonight, they were together. They were alive. And that was enough. The following days passed in a strange calm that felt more unsettling than the violence that had preceded it. Victor's death sent shockwaves through Manhattan's underworld. His remaining organization crumbled within 48 hours as lieutenants either fled the city or approached Adrian with offers of allegiance. The FBI investigation quietly disappeared, buried under paperwork and bureaucratic red tape that Adrian's lawyers navigated with practiced ease. Elena watched it all from inside the mansion, observing how power consolidated, how fear and respect created order from chaos. Adrian worked 18-hour days, meeting with associates, restructuring operations, ensuring Victor's territory integrated smoothly into his own empire. He came to bed exhausted, usually long after midnight, and held Elena like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. They didn't talk about the future, didn't discuss what came next. It was as if speaking the questions aloud would shatter the fragile peace they'd carved from the wreckage. On the 5th morning after Victor's death, Elena woke to find Adrian already dressed, standing at the windows overlooking the city. The sun was just rising, painting Manhattan in shades of gold and shadow. "You're up early," she said, sitting up. Adrian turned, and Elena saw something in his expression she couldn't quite read. Determination mixed with uncertainty, hope shadowed by fear. "I need to show you something." He offered his hand. "Get dressed. We're going for a drive." 20 minutes later, they were in Adrian's personal car, not the armored Mercedes, but a sleek Aston Martin he rarely drove, heading out of the city. Mikhail followed in a second vehicle with 2 guards, but Adrian had insisted on driving himself. "Where are we going?" Elena asked as Brooklyn gave way to suburbs, then open highway. "You'll see." Adrian's hand found hers on the console between them. "Trust me." They drove north for nearly 2 hours, leaving behind the urban sprawl for rolling hills and autumn forests painted in crimson and gold. Finally, Adrian turned onto a private road that wound through acres of pristine woodland before emerging at a stunning property overlooking the Hudson River. The house was beautiful, modern glass and stone that seemed to grow organically from the landscape, floor-to-ceiling windows capturing views of the river valley, surrounded by gardens that would be spectacular in spring. But it wasn't the mansion's cold opulence. This felt warm, lived in, like a home instead of a fortress. Adrian parked and helped Elena from the car. She stood staring at the house, at the land stretching in every direction, and felt something shift in her chest. "What is this place?" "It was my mother's." Adrian's voice was soft. "She bought it years before she died, planning to retire here away from my father's business. She never got the chance." He led Elena toward the front door. "It's been sitting empty for a decade. I couldn't bring myself to sell it, but I couldn't come here either. Too many memories of what she wanted and never had." Inside, the house was exactly as his mother had left it. Furniture covered in white sheets, family photos on the walls, books on shelves waiting to be read. Adrian pulled the sheets off carefully, revealing elegant furniture that matched the warm aesthetic of the exterior. "Why are you showing me this?" Elena asked, though part of her already knew. Adrian turned to face her fully. Because I've spent the last 5 days thinking about what Victor said before he died. About being a monster. About Hugh eventually leaving me for someone clean. His hands found hers. And I realized he was right about one thing. I can't keep living the way I have been. Not if I want any chance of deserving you. Elena's breath caught. Adrian, let me finish, please. He led her to the windows overlooking the river. For 15 years, I've run my father's empire. Built it bigger, more powerful. I told myself it was duty, legacy, responsibility. But the truth is, I was just continuing the cycle because I didn't know how to do anything else. What are you saying? I'm saying I want out. Not completely. I'm not naive enough to think I can just walk away. But I can transition. Hand operational control to people I trust while I focus on the legitimate businesses. Real estate, investments, the construction companies. Things my mother would have been proud of instead of ashamed. Elena's heart was racing. And this house? Could be ours. If you want it. Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. You and Lucas could live here. Safe. Far enough from the city that the shadows of my past don't touch you every day, but close enough that I can be here whenever I'm not dealing with business. We could have something close to normal, Elena. Not perfect, but real. Tears burned Elena's eyes. You'd give up your empire for me? Not give up. Transform it into something that doesn't require me to kill people to maintain control. Something that lets me sleep at night without seeing their faces. Adrian cupped her face in his hands. You asked me once what I wanted. I want this. A life with you. Maybe marriage someday if you'll have me. Maybe kids if we're lucky. A future that's about building instead of destroying. Elena could barely breathe through the emotion flooding her chest. What about the people who won't let you walk away? The enemies who will see it as weakness. That's why the transition will take time, a year, maybe 2, to consolidate enough power that my stepping back doesn't create a vacuum, to put the right people in place, to make sure anyone who might challenge the new structure understands the consequences. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But it starts now, today, with me choosing a different path forward. And if I said I wanted to go back to the city? To stay at the mansion with you? Then we stay. This isn't about me deciding what's best for you, Elena. It's about giving you options, real ones. Adrian's eyes were intense. I love you, more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. And whatever you choose, city or countryside, staying or leaving, this life or a different one, I'll make it work. Because you're the only future I want. Elena looked around the house, imagining it filled with life instead of memories. She pictured Lucas here, continuing his physical therapy in the gardens, maybe going back to school at one of the nearby colleges. She imagined herself waking up to river views instead of iron gates, building something real instead of just surviving. But more than that, she imagined Adrian here, coming home to peace instead of violence, learning to be the man his mother had hoped he'd become, growing into someone defined by more than the terrible choices his father had forced on him. I want this, she said finally. I want to try building something real with you. Here, in this house your mother loved, away from the violence but not from you, never from you. Adrian's expression cracked, relief and joy and love flooding his features. He pulled her into a kiss that was different from all the ones before, not desperate or hungry, but tender, a promise of tomorrow instead of fear of today. I'll make you happy, he murmured against her lips. I swear it, whatever it takes. You already do, Elena pulled back to look at him. But Adrian, you need to understand something. I'm not asking you to become someone else. I fell in love with you, complicated, dangerous, haunted you. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to keep choosing us over everything else. Every day. His forehead rested against hers. For the rest of my life, I choose us. They spent the rest of the morning exploring the house, making plans. Lucas could have the ground floor suite with the accessible bathroom and garden access. The library could become Elena's study. Maybe she'd finally go back to school, pursue the education her mother had wanted for her. Adrian could work from the home office overlooking the river, managing the transition to legitimate business remotely. It wasn't perfect. There would still be danger, still be moments when Adrian's past caught up to them. But it was real, honest, a future they were building together instead of one forced on them by circumstance. By the time they returned to the city that evening, Elena felt lighter than she had in years, like she'd been carrying a weight she hadn't even realized existed, and someone had finally helped her set it down. The mansion greeted them with its usual imposing grandeur, but it felt different now. Temporary. Not a prison or a sanctuary, just a waypoint on the journey to something better. Lucas was waiting in the library, and his face lit up when he saw Elena. "Where have you been? I've been going crazy, wondering if something happened." Something did happen. Elena sat beside him, taking his hands. Something amazing. She told him about the house, about Adrian's plans, about the future they were going to build. Lucas listened with wide eyes, and when she finished, he was smiling so broadly it looked painful. "You're sure?" he asked. "This is what you want?" "I'm sure, but only if you are too. This affects both of us." Lucas looked at Adrian, who'd been standing quietly by the door. "Can I really go back to school? Like, actually finish my degree?" "Yes." Adrian moved closer. "Whatever you need. Tuition, equipment for accessibility, transportation, all of it handled. And the physical therapy? Dr. Petrov has already recommended a specialist upstate, one of the best in the country. He'll come to the house 3 times a week." Lucas was quiet for a moment, his eyes suspiciously bright. "My whole life since the accident, I felt like a burden. Like I was the reason Elena couldn't have her own life. But this," he looked at his sister, "this feels like a second chance for both of us." Elena pulled him into a hug, and over his shoulder she saw Adrian watching them with an expression of such pure contentment that her heart ached. This was what love looked like. Not grand gestures or dramatic rescues, but quiet moments of building a life together, of choosing each other even when the world made that choice difficult. The next weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Adrian began the delicate process of restructuring his empire, promoting trusted lieutenants and gradually extracting himself from day-to-day operations. He met with rivals and allies alike, making it clear that while he was stepping back, his protection and retribution were still very much in effect for those under his aegis. Elena and Lucas moved into the riverside house, slowly transforming it from a shrine to Adrian's mother into a living, breathing home. They filled it with new furniture and old books, with Lucas's physical therapy equipment and Elena's college applications. The gardens came alive under professional care, and the river view became their morning meditation. Adrian split his time between the city and the house, and Elena learned to navigate the rhythm of his dual life. Some days he was the cold crime lord, handling problems with ruthless efficiency. Other days he was just Adrian, the man who brought her coffee in bed, who helped Lucas with his exercises, who sat with her on the dock watching the sun set over the water. 2 months after Victor's death, on a cold December evening, Adrian came home with news that would change everything. Elena was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard his car in the driveway. Something in the urgency of his footsteps made her turn, and then he was there, pulling her into a fierce embrace. "It's done," he said against her hair. "The transition is complete. Mikhail is taking over operational control. I'm officially out." Elena pulled back to search his face. "Completely?" "As completely as someone like me can ever be. I'll still consult, still have the final say on major decisions, but the day-to-day violence, the illegal operations, the constant war, that's Mikhail's problem now. I'm just a businessman with questionable associates." His smile was crooked, mostly legitimate anyway. "How do you feel?" Adrian considered the question. "Terrified. Relieved. Free in a way I haven't been since I was 17. He cupped her face. "Ready to start the life I actually want instead of the one I inherited." That night they celebrated with Lucas and Dr. Petrov, who'd become almost family in the months of Lucas's treatment. The young man could walk almost normally now, his paralysis reduced to occasional numbness and weakness that continued to improve with therapy. He'd been accepted to 3 universities and was deciding between them with the luxury of knowing money was no longer an obstacle. After dinner, Adrian led Elena out to the dock despite the winter cold. The river was dark, reflecting city lights from miles downstream, and the stars overhead were brilliant in the clear air. "I have something for you." Adrian pulled a small box from his pocket, and Elena's breath caught. "Adrian, Before you panic, it's not what you think. Not yet. He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm in the shape of a key. This is the key to this house, to the life we're building. I wanted you to have something physical to represent that this is yours. Not because of me, not because I gave it to you, but because you chose it. You chose us. Elena's eyes filled with tears as he fastened the bracelet around her wrist. It's perfect. There's an inscription. Adrian turned her wrist so the lamplight caught the engraving inside the key. Read it. Elena squinted at the tiny script. For the woman who saw me when I was invisible to myself. Adrian. Her voice broke on his name. You saved me, Elena. Not from Victor, not from the FBI, but from myself. From a life that was killing me slowly every day. You saw past the monster everyone else sees and found the man I'd forgotten I could be. He pulled her close. So thank you for seeing me, for choosing me, for giving me a future worth living. Elena kissed him with everything she felt, love and gratitude and hope for all the tomorrows they'd have together. When they finally broke apart, both were crying and smiling. I love you, she whispered. So much it scares me sometimes. I love you too. More than I thought I was capable of. Adrian's thumb traced her bottom lip. Marry me. Elena's heart stopped. What? Not now, not until you're ready. But someday, when you're sure this is forever, marry me. Make this official. Let me spend the rest of my life proving I can be the man you deserve. You already are. Elena's hands framed his face. But yes, someday, when we're both ready, I'll marry you, Adrian Volkov. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other under the stars. Two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk toward the light together. 6 months later, on a warm June evening, Elena stood in the garden of the riverside house wearing a simple white dress. Lucas stood beside her, no longer needing even a cane, ready to walk her down the aisle. The ceremony would be small, just Mikhail Doctor, Petrov, a handful of Adrian's most trusted people, and a few friends Elena had made at the university where she'd started taking classes. Adrian waited under an arbor covered in roses, wearing a dark suit and the expression of a man who couldn't quite believe his good fortune. When Elena appeared, his eyes went bright with emotion. The ceremony was simple, their vows even simpler. They promised to choose each other, to build together, to face whatever came with honesty and courage. When Adrian slipped the ring on Elena's finger, his hands were shaking. I never thought I'd have this, he admitted to the small gathering. Never imagined I deserved it, but Elena saw something in me worth saving, and I planned to spend the rest of my life proving she was right. Elena's vows were just as simple. You gave me back my life when I thought I'd lost it to debt and fear and just surviving. You taught me I could be strong and vulnerable at the same time. You showed me what real love looks like. Not perfect, not easy, but honest and fierce and worth fighting for. I choose you, Adrian, today and every day after. They kissed as husband and wife while their small group applauded, and Elena felt the last piece of her fear finally fall away. This was real. This was hers. This was the life she'd chosen and fought for and earned. The reception was held on the lawn overlooking the river. As the sun set and fairy lights twinkled in the trees, Elena danced with Lucas, then with Adrian, and finally just stood watching her new husband talk with Mikhail about something probably related to business, but definitely not illegal. You look happy, Lucas said, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. I am. Deliriously, terrifyingly happy. Elena accepted the glass. How are you doing? I got the acceptance letter today. For the coaching program. Lucas's smile was incandescent. I start in the fall. They want me to work with adaptive athletes, help develop new training techniques for people with spinal injuries. Lucas, that's amazing. It feels like everything Mom wanted for us is finally happening. Not the way she imagined, but still real. He looked at Adrian across the lawn. She would have liked him, I think. Once she got past the whole crime lord thing. Elena laughed. Maybe. Or she would have killed him for putting me in danger. Nah. She would have seen what I see. A guy who loves you so much, he's willing to change his entire life to make you happy. That's rare, Elena. Hold on to it. I plan to. Later, after the guests had left and Lucas had retired to his suite, Adrian and Elena walked down to the dock. The river was peaceful in the moonlight, and somewhere in the distance, a night bird called. "No regrets?" Adrian asked, pulling Elena against his side. "Not one." "You?" "Only that I didn't find you sooner. Think of all the time we wasted when you were invisible and I was blind. We found each other when we were meant to. Not before, when we couldn't have handled it, but exactly when we needed each other most." Elena turned to face him. "Besides, if I'd met you before the alley, before Lucas and the debts, and learning how strong I actually am, I wouldn't have been ready for you. I would have run. And now? Now I know what's worth staying for." She kissed him softly. "You're worth it, Adrian. This life we're building, this future, it's worth every risk, every moment of fear. Because at the end of the day, I get to wake up beside you. I get to love you and be loved by you. And that makes everything else bearable." Adrian held her close, and Elena felt his heart beating against hers, steady and strong. They'd both been invisible in their own ways, her to the world, him to himself. But together, they'd found a way to be seen, to be real, to be fully, gloriously alive. The next morning, Elena woke in their bedroom, their actual bedroom now, shared and official, to find Adrian already awake, watching her with soft eyes. "Good morning, Mrs. Volkov." Elena smiled at the name. She'd kept Brooks professionally, but hearing him call her Mrs. Volkov still sent warmth through her chest. "Good morning, husband." "I have something to show you. Get dressed." They drove into the city, to a neighborhood in Brooklyn Elena didn't recognize. Adrian parked in front of a community center that looked recently renovated, all fresh paint and new windows. "What is this?" "Come see." Inside, the center was bustling with activity. Kids in after-school programs, adults in job training classes, a medical clinic offering free care. Adrian led Elena to a plaque on the wall. The Adrian Volkov Center for Community Development, established 2024, in memory of a woman who believed everyone deserves a second chance. "Your mother," Elena whispered. "Yes. I used Victor's territory, his old operations, and turned them into something good. Jobs programs for at-risk youth, medical care for people without insurance, education initiatives for immigrants." Adrian's voice was thick with emotion. "It won't erase what I've done, but maybe it balances the scales a little." Elena pulled him into a fierce hug. "She would be so proud of you." I hope so. I'm trying to be someone who deserves that pride, someone who deserves you." They toured the center together, Adrian introducing Elena to staff members and program participants. She saw the impact he was making, real, tangible good in a community that had once known only his violence. It wasn't redemption, maybe, but it was a start. Over the next years, their life settled into a rhythm that felt almost ordinary. Elena finished her degree in social work and started volunteering at the Adrian Volkov Center, eventually developing her own programs for families dealing with medical debt. Lucas became a renowned coach for adaptive athletes, his own recovery inspiring hundreds of others. Adrian's business empire grew entirely legitimate, his reputation slowly transforming from feared crime lord to respected, if mysterious, businessman and philanthropist. They had their struggles. Adrian's past didn't disappear just because he'd left it behind. There were moments when old enemies resurfaced, when violence threatened to pull him back. There were nights when nightmares woke him, when the weight of his choices crushed down and Elena had to remind him he was worthy of the redemption he sought. But through it all, they chose each other. Every single day, they made the conscious choice to stay, to fight, to build something beautiful from the ashes of their complicated beginning. 5 years after their wedding, on a cool autumn evening, Elena stood on the dock watching the sunset paint the river in shades of fire. She felt Adrian's arms wrap around her from behind, his hand settling on the gentle swell of her stomach where their first child grew. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured against her hair. "How far we've come. How different everything is from that night in the alley, when I thought I was dying." Elena covered his hand with hers. "How grateful I am that Mikhail found me, that you saw me, that we were both brave enough to choose this." "Best decision I ever made," Adrian said. "Seeing you, loving you, building this life with you." Elena turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd been a stranger, then a savior, then an impossibility, and finally the love of her life. Do you ever miss it? The power, the control, the adrenaline? Adrian considered the question seriously. Sometimes. Usually when I'm sitting through boring board meetings or dealing with construction permits. But then I come home to you, to this life we've built, and I remember what I traded all that for, and it's not even close. This, he gestured at the house, the river, the future growing inside her. This is everything I never knew I wanted. Everything I didn't think I deserved. You deserve it. Elena pulled him down for a kiss. You deserve happiness and peace and a life that's about more than survival. We both do. As the sun disappeared below the horizon and stars began to appear overhead, they stood together on the dock where they'd had so many important conversations. Two people who'd been invisible, to the world, to themselves, until they'd found each other. The invisible girl and the crime boss who'd learned to see beyond his own darkness. Together, they'd built something real from violence and fear and impossible choices. Not perfect, never perfect, but honest and fierce, and filled with the kind of love that changed everything. And as Adrian led Elena back to their home, their hands intertwined, she knew that whatever came next, children, challenges, the inevitable complications of a life built on such complicated foundations, they would face it together, always together, because that's what love meant. Not the absence of difficulty, but the choice to stay even when staying was hard. The choice to see and be seen, to know and be known, to love and be loved, despite every reason not to. In the house that had once held only memories, light spilled from every window. Inside, Lucas was cooking dinner, probably something far too elaborate. Dr. Petrov had stopped by with updates on the center's medical programs. Mikhail would arrive soon with his new wife, a kindergarten teacher who somehow saw past his dangerous exterior to the loyal, protective man beneath. This was their life now. Complicated, yes. Unconventional, absolutely. But theirs, built from choices and chances, from seeing each other when the rest of the world looked away. Elena Brooks Volkov had spent years being invisible, but now, wrapped in her husband's arms in the home they'd created together, she'd never felt more seen, more known, more completely and gloriously alive. And that made every moment of darkness they'd survived worth it, every single one.